An Ogdensburg school has been on lockdown this afternoon after a threat was received. Ogdensburg Police Chief Mark Kearns tells 7 News a threat involving a gun was received this afternoon, and the school resource officer was alerted. Police arrived on scene in force. Multiple agencies. This was just after school had been dismissed around 3, but some after-school activities were still underway. Chief Kearns said the person who allegedly made the threat was located. The chief would not comment further on the person or their current status because of their age. He would not confirm if it is a student. Chief Kearns said there was no active shooter, and no gun was found. The case is now under investigation. Police went door to door through classrooms in the building and escorted students, teachers, and staff to the Golden Dome nearby. County Legislator Jim Reagan happened to be in OFA as an advisor to the Key Club when the incident happened and was among those under lockdown. He told us he found the police response impressive.
I was very impressed with the job that they did and how what a professional job the faculty and staff and the young people were very composed, and the group of students that I was with, you would have been so impressed with them.
Police Chief Kearns says about 150 students were affected by the lockdown, including sports teams and others involved in after-school activities. He said that lockdown was expected to be lifted any time now, and he said parents can pick up their children at the Golden Dome. Again, the incident ended safely.